are live. What's up, guys? Am I coming through loud and clear? Hopefully. Who's in the chat? 3 people on the stream. It's good to see. Am I coming through loud and clear? It's been a while. Been a while since I've done a stream. Let me just get the comments up. Sean's in the chat. What's up, Sean? What's up, man? Good to see you on board. How are things over in sunny Ireland? Probably not so sunny. If it's anything like it's been here, it's been cold, it's been wet and miserable. But oh yeah, I like the Neo / John Wick profile picture. If you're yeah, I've not seen The Matrix. Yeah, I did put it in the thumbnail. I did put it as a talking point, but I've not seen the film. I have seen Spiderman. I mean, The Matrix Resurrections. Hopefully a couple of people will jump on board. But yeah, Matrix. It's not something. Let me just change. Give me 2 seconds. Sorry about that. Real professional operation. Just bring the light a little bit closer. I don't look so anemic when I bring a bit of light to my face. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, Matrix. Not seen it. Interested to see the film, but not prepared to pay, like £11 to see the film. I mean, cinema prices are just extortionate anyway. And to pay that sort of money to see a film that has just been getting absolutely, ridiculed online. Here's my 2 cents. Not as good as the first one, but it definitely isn't as bad as a lot of people are saying. It's kind of how I was looking at the trailer, and I've jumped in to a few, spots, TV spots they've shown, and it can't be any worse than 2 and 3. I mean, I actually think I'll enjoy this more than Reloaded and Revolution. Is it Revolutions? Was it Revolutions? I can't remember. But they were dog shit films. Those 2 films were horrendous. So, I mean, I can't, as bad as the reviews are, what's interesting to me is some of the sites that are giving this film really, really bad reviews are kind of the sites that I was expecting for it to get like really solid reviews from, because it's directed by Lana Wachowski, who obviously is trans. She's transitioned from male to female. The Guardian, anybody who's not in America, the Guardian newspaper / website is one of the most woke left-wing newspapers imaginable. So you can imagine my surprise when they gave this 2 stars, because I thought they would be raving about this film, not because it's a good film, but because they would be pushing, the whole idea, well, this is a trans woman who's directed this film, therefore it must be amazing, because that's what The Guardian does. Anybody who's not aware of how things work in the UK, it's probably similar in the US. In the UK, The Guardian is a very, 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 very left-leaning newspaper website. And I was expecting them to be raving about this film, not because they thought it was a good film, just because they would be biased in the fact that it was directed by a trans woman. But they gave it 2 stars. So I was thinking, just how bad is this film? If even the ultra-left woke Guardian newspaper is calling this film shit, then I thought there really is nothing down for this film. But then I thought, well, if they're calling this film shit, maybe there's something good about it, because I thought, if usually if there's something like The Guardian, if they hate something that much, I'm usually like, well, I'm interested. So I went on a few other websites, a few which aren't quite so progressive, and they were just saying the same thing. So yeah, it's just it just sounds like it seems like everybody hates this film, no matter what side of the political spectrum you're on. But I'm still looking forward to watching it. As like I say, I've jumped in and out of a few of the clips online. To me, it's a film not to be taken seriously. You got Neo as John Wick, as Keanu Reeves. It is what it is. So yeah, I mean, I certainly wouldn't pay £11 to see it, but when it drops on streaming, whoever's streaming it, or VOD, I'll rent it. Sean says, I do know some people actually have enjoyed the film. Yeah, I did. It's not going to be hated by everyone. I sort of think it's very cool because whatever the film is, even if it's not the greatest film in the world, I can imagine on a big screen, there is still an element of spectacle about it, just because of the budget was obviously fairly large, and it's obviously on a fairly grand scale. The whole, well, certainly the original films were. So regardless of whether it's a bad film or a good film, watching a film on a cinema, I think it does kind of elevate a movie up a notch or two. If you're watching a real dog shit film on a small screen, you, and it is a real dog shit film. And you think this is a 5 out of 10 film. If you go to a big screen and you're surrounded by a bunch of people who are invested in that film, and that film, it's not the best film in the world, but on a big screen, you just kind of get sucked into it more and surrounded by a bunch of like-minded people, and that score may go up a notch or two. But well done to the chat. What's up, Lon? One of us really missed the opposite relating. This could have been amazing to get the ones invested. I mean, I don't. I'm putting Matrix up a week after Spider-Man Far From Home, or No Way Home, sorry, was just, I mean, that was just, I don't know what they were thinking of with that. I mentioned it, I think I mentioned it in Pizz's Patreon stream like last month, Lorne. That was always going to be a bad move. Because at the end of the day, Far From Home, God, I keep saying Far From Home, No Way Home was always going to do major money. Everybody knew that Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire were coming back to this franchise. It was the worst kept secret in Hollywood. They may have said, "Oh, he's not. We all knew. So when the film dropped, it was just, and the box office has proved us right. And that's a separate discussion, really, because I mean, I did want to actually get into the Spider-Man story a little bit. Yeah, Spider-Man was good, even though we knew it was going to happen. Yeah. I mean, I saw Spider-Man not opening night, but 2 days. I mean, it was a Friday, so it was like maybe day after opening, and the cinema was as busy as could be expected for a COVID audience. I mean, I think they did implement social distancing to a point, so it was busy, but nothing like Endgame busy. 2 years previous, but that was just entirely down to COVID. So going to see No Way Home just before Christmas, to be sat in a cinema which was as busy as it was just almost surreal because for the last 2 years it's just been in a cinema. It's just, and usually when you go to a cinema anyway, it's usually pretty quiet. I mean, most time when you go to a cinema, unless it's a big film in the opening weekend, it's usually pretty dead anyway. And I saw No Way Home um, on a Friday night. So obviously it's a Friday night. It's the opening night, or maybe the second night. I can't remember, but this was 5:30, so this wasn't like peak viewing time. This was like kind of just before. This is like an hour or two before it gets really busy, but it was still busy. It was a busy cinema, and you know, the crowd were invested in this movie. I mean, the reveal of Toby, even though we knew that Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield were in this movie, the reveal when they made their appearance, there was an audible, cheer. And in UK, it's not like America where I don't, it's we're a bit more reserved in the UK, as you probably know. We don't really do the big you're cheering, little things like that. But there was an audible sort of cheer. I mean, quite a loud cheer for Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield, which is not something I'm used to in a British cinema. The last time I can remember any sort of reaction, seriously, was probably Force Awakens, and that was in a packed cinema, back in 2015, whatever it was. And the time before that, really, was probably Phantom Menace, the opening credits, where there was just like a Phantom Menace back in '99. Obviously, 16-year gap between that and Return of the Jedi. Seeing Phantom Menace opening weekend in '99 was something special. No matter, the film was a disappointment, yeah, but going to see that film opening weekend, and when Lucasfilm comes on the screen, and then a long time ago, there was kind of like an audible gasp from the audience, and it was something you're like, this means something. And I didn't gasp along with them. I probably should have done, but there was an audible gasp, and it's kind of like this meant something, and I think it's something it's not easily replicated. But like I say, something not on that level, but what the audience felt with the Spider-Man film was something similar to like what I felt as going back to '99, and what a lot of people felt then. And it's not something that is commonplace in cinemas. So, it really says something about Spider-Man as a sort of as a franchise. And I'm so glad that this Spider-Man film is a Sony movie and not a Disney MCU film. This movie is not part of the MCU per se. It's separate. It's kind of part. It's kind of. I mean, you'd have to speak to a lawyer to try and find out the ins and outs of this, but basically, Sony own the rights to Spider-Man, and so any money that this film makes, Sony takes 75% of the cut, and Disney takes just 25%. So Sony have kind of got Disney over a barrel with this character, because Disney, this has not been a good year for the MCU. I mean, Phase 4 is just a disaster for them, really. I mean, Black Widow tanked, didn't make money, and you can blame COVID. They put it onto streaming the day of release, so I can forgive that not making money. But Shang-Chi did not make money. Eternals tanked. Nobody gives a damn about Eternals. And these are all MCU properties. Venom made money. Venom, which is a Sony property, made money. Spider-Man is on its way to making $1 billion at the box office. The ball is in Sony's court. They have got Disney over a barrel because they have got all the power now. Because Phase 4 is going to be a disaster for Marvel, in my opinion. I've said this before. I don't know where they're going. I think a lot of the Marvel fans have jumped off now. I think they jumped off with Endgame, I'm not really invested now in Marvel at all. I watched No Way Home because it's Spider-Man. I don't care about the Eternals. If you're gonna force like 10 new characters into a franchise in one film, I don't care. I don't care who these people are. Shang-Chi, I have no idea who Shang-Chi is. Um, okay, I could grow to like Shang-Chi. I had no idea who Iron Man was at the beginning of the MCU, but I grew to like Iron Man. But Robert Downey Jr. sells it for me. Shang-Chi could do the same thing, but I think I'm just done with MC. I'm done with superhero films now. You know, I think it's just bare now. It's just been too much of it now. How many more superhero movies do we need? And Marvel just keep on churning out show after show, movie after movie, and I think people are just sick now. And I think Sony, because they've got hold of the rights to like the some of the core characters. They've got Spider-Man. Okay, Venom isn't somebody you associate as being a core character, but it's Tom Hardy. So Tom Hardy's is a big name and he's a recognisable name. So they keep hold of him. That's box office. It's maybe not box office gold, but it's box office silver. And obviously, Spider-Man is box office gold. I mean, there's no denying that. Only need to look at what they've done there. But I mean, yeah, it's. I mean, there's Disney. Yeah, I just think they really, really, really need to like look at where they're going to go with in the next couple of years, because Doctor Strange 2, don't care. Doctor Strange is made to look like an idiot in the new Spider-Man film. He looks stupid. I mean, Tobey Maguire, Tom Holland, he makes him look like a fool in this film, which is not the look you want for like this genius sort of character you've got. But yeah, I mean, it is what it is. Yeah, more power to Sony. I think Marvel. I think Marvel. I don't care about Marvel anymore. I don't care about Disney. I think they've ruined Star Wars. Marvel was great for the first 10 years. It literally was like a 10-year project. From Iron Man to Endgame. For me, that was phase one. I've said this before. That was phase one. We're into phase two. Forget phase four. This is phase two. Phase one was 09 to 19. You brought in all your recognisable characters and a few lesser known characters. You told a story, with twists and turns, and had an overreaching arc that ended with Endgame. And you did a reasonable job of ending it. Not perfect, but it was good enough. Good enough for what a 10-year arc could do, and it's done. That's it. Quit while you're ahead. But obviously, there's too much money at stake, and they're going to keep on going with Doctor Strange 2, Captain Marvel 2. Captain Marvel 1 was bad enough. Eternals, nobody cares about. Shang-Chi, nobody cares about. What people do care about is Spider-Man, and Spider-Man does not belong to Disney. So, yeah. So I just hope Sony just take Disney to the cleaners. And I hope they make all sorts of demands of Disney and just say, we're not releasing this character unless you give us even more money, and then we want your characters to appear in Sony movies. I'm no lawyer. I don't know how it works, but all I know is Sony have got all the cards at the minute. And Disney, Disney can have to listen to Sony and listen to what Sony wants. Because Sony they're in a powerful position right now. Sean says, it ain't done, that's mentioned Marvel, got the X-Men rights back. Well, I mean, yeah, but what are they going to do? What are they going to do with the X-Men? Like, somehow you hear people. It was Kirsten saying, well, yeah, it would have been nice, but it would, I mean, it would, how would they have explained her coming through as well? I mean, I suppose she would have had to be with Spider-Man at that specific point in time with Tobey Maguire and then come through. So, yeah, I mean, it could have worked, um, I mean, I love the camaraderie between Tobey Maguire and you know, um, oh my god, his name. Why have I forgotten his name? Amazing Spider-Man 2, Amazing Spider-Man 1. I've forgotten his name totally. I don't know why. I've been talking about him all day and I've forgotten his name. Anyway, and I think I said him, I think I just mentioned him in leading the stream. Anyway, the camaraderie between Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield. What? I've just literally talked. I literally said his name about 10 minutes ago. Andrew Garfield. The camaraderie between Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire is just the scene where they're like just riffing and they're just like they first meet up and he's like, "Oh, I've got a really bad back, and can you like?" Oh, he goes, "Oh, I can, I can crack that out for you." And I didn't know that was actually a reference to when Andrew Garfield was Spider-Man and he was complaining about having a bad back and he wanted to delay filming apparently because he had a bad back, and that was kind of like a reference to that, and just the mention about what they'd done as Spider-Man, and Tom Holland saying, "Oh, I've been," they say, "You've been to space," and all I did was fight some Russian. I think he said all I did was fight some Russian guy, and they're talking about the Avengers, and he's like, "Oh, you were in a band? Oh, that's cool." It's like, no, it's like, it's just, the chemistry between those three characters in the film is just it's on par with anything that Iron Man's done. Robert Downey Jr. and anyone he's interacted with in the Marvel films. It's just so well done. And Andrew Garfield in the Amazing Spider-Man films. I mean, they aren't great films. The Amazing Spider-Man films aren't particularly great films, but two's is a really bad film. But he's kind of like maybe want to go revisit those films because he's so good in this film. He's just on another level, and it's just that kind of it's hard to put a finger on it. It's just so well done, and he's not just him. I mean, Tobey Maguire as well works, but Tobey Maguire feels a little bit more forced than Garfield. He doesn't look quite as comfortable in the role. It almost feels a little bit knowing, if you know what I mean. It almost feels with Tobey Maguire, even though he's great, it almost feels like a bit of a nudge, wink, wink to the audience that he knows that he's just back playing Tobey Maguire as Spider-Man. Whereas with Andrew Garfield, it just feels so natural. It's hard to describe it, but anyway, enough to talk about Marvel. Let's talk about Scream 5. Okay. So, Scream 5 drops in 2 weeks. Is it the 14th? Friday? Is it Friday the 14th of January? Well, I hope it's a Friday because I'm going to see it opening night. And I will be doing a post-mortem the night of release. So we'll be going live midnight. It'll literally be about 4 hours after viewing the film. No idea what to make of this film. I've only seen one trailer. I don't really want to go into it, seeing any more about the film than what we've seen. But there are a couple. Yeah, I'm just going to share a screen because they have dropped a couple of posters for the film. Share screen. Yeah, I'm so bad at this. Chrome tab. Screen 5 holding posters. Share. There we go. Yeah, so this is an article by Screen Rant. This is one of the most recent articles you can find about the film. There's not much going on in terms of the movie. I've been looking for up to date sort of stuff about it, and just let's see. But they did share a couple of really sort of like cheesy looking posters, like Christmas related, with Ghostface in the snow. Ghostface brings his unique brand of festive cheer to the holidays in the laser Scream posters. The upcoming class will mark the first movie in the Scream franchise in over 20 years. No, it was 10 years ago. So obviously they don't know what the hell we're talking about. And the first to be directed by frequent horror filmmaker Matt Bettelli-Olpin and not Wes Craven, following the legendary actor's passing in 2015. Scream will once again follow the teenagers' Woodspread as they become the target of a new killer who begins wearing the iconic Ghostface mask. While Scream will bring plenty of new faces to the franchise, the movie also boasts a plethora of characters who have previously taken on Ghostface and survived, including Courtney Cox, David Arquette, and Neve Campbell, all reprising their roles from the first 4 films. Roger Jackson will also return to provide his vocal talents to the Ghostface mask. That's good to know. Has he done all the films? I'm not really sure. Reprising his role from the previous Scream movies and the subsequent Scream anthology series. While details are still scarce how the movie will play out, it's still scarce even though the film was only 2 weeks from release. The most recent Scream trailer confirms that the new Ghostface are targeting relatives of previous killers. A twist on the franchise's formula. Okay. Shit on Scream. So, okay. Not sure how that's going to play out. Have I? Yeah, there we go. I don't know. I've got concerns about this movie. I don't really want to see it. I've seen the trailer from I think it dropped about 3 months ago. I really don't want to see anything more than this. I think Lorna's playing Ghostface in this one. Oh, sure. He'd be a good killer. Lorna would make a good killer. Let me just. I will just copy the clipboard. So if anybody just wants to jump on, well, I've totally forgotten how to. Oops, what have I done? I'm not sure what happened there. I don't know what I'm doing. Anyway, back to Scream. My main concern about Scream 5 is, and I hate to sound like a broken record, I know I mention this a lot, but I just hope it's not woke. And the reason I say that is because Scream 1, 2, 3, 96, 97, 2000, was it? 2001? I can't remember. Scream 4, 2011. 10 years ago was a long time in Hollywood, long time in pop culture. 2016, a lot of shit went down 2016 onwards, and woke culture is kind of infiltrating every little aspect of pop culture now, whether it's movies, TV shows, books, music, even Dungeons and Dragons is getting infiltrated by woke culture. So hopefully Scream just doesn't fall prey to it, but I'd be amazed if it doesn't at least, have some impact. I mean, I mean, there's bound to be some impact from that woke agenda on the film. I can't imagine it doesn't have something there just to, and I've said before, there's a time and a place for woke means aware, culture, aware to, injustice, which is great. It's great in movies where it's welcome and it's justified, but it's getting into every part of entertainment now where it doesn't it's not needed, and we don't need to see, like this woke culture in slasher films. And it's it's not like, I'm not justified in being a little bit skeptical, because I mean, look what's happened to like some of the, like, look at Black Christmas 2019. Like, that was just agenda driven nonsense. There was no, that was film made just to piss people off and make a small percentage of people on Twitter feel good about themselves. And that's the thing. That's the thing about, like, this woke narrative now that is like kind of just infiltrating everything. It's like, it's like that saying, like, get woke, go broke. It's not without. It's not. You could say it is justified in a way that, show me something that's like gone woke that has like made major money. It doesn't really work, because most of the people who consume pop culture, be it film, TV, books, you know, Dungeons and Dragons, you name it, anything that people consume in terms of pop culture, very few of those people are the sort of people who spend every waking minute on Twitter complaining about something. It's like the J.K. Rowling incident, where she made a tweet about. I'm not even going to go there, but it's like she made a perfectly innocent tweet about something that she felt strongly about, and she was cancelled from her own reunion. The J.K. Rowling reunion. Well, not the J.K. Rowling reunion, the Harry Potter reunion with Daniel Radcliffe, Emma Watson, and the ginger one, who's completely irrelevant. They had the audacity to sort of like speak out and say, "Oh no, she's not welcome." You know, you little fucking brats wouldn't be where you are now without that woman. And don't get me wrong, J.K. Rowling is one of the most woke, sort of left-wing personalities on the internet. In terms of like an online presence, and in just a presence just in everyday life. She's a billionaire. She's just like as woke as they come. But even she found a sort of like tipping point, and she spoke out about it. And now she's being cancelled by people who are just totally insane. And it's like, where do you draw the line? It's like Daniel Radcliffe, Emma Watson, Rupert Grint, whatever your fucking name is. You owe that woman your livelihoods, because without that woman, you would be fucking nowhere. Daniel Radcliffe, you are awful as an actor. You are totally, totally awful. Emma Watson, the big feminist. You're such a big feminist, but you cancel J.K. Rowling, who was speaking out against people who wanted to cancel women. Okay, I'm not sure how that works. So you're not really a feminist, are you? And Rupert Grint, you're just irrelevant. So yeah, you're a millionaire off the back of someone who you decided to cancel because you haven't got the guts to speak up. But yeah, I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy. Yeah, and so I mean, I got to hear from Screen 5 because I just hope Screen 5 is not woke, because wokeness destroys everything in pop culture. And if I'm wrong, then why does box office prove me? Why does box office back up my facts? Because box office proves that wokeness doesn't sell. Nobody buys it. People want old school, old fashioned shit. They want nostalgia. Nostalgia sells. Spiderman makes money. Eternals doesn't make money. Okay, it may not be entirely down to like wokeness, but it doesn't help. We're up to on the chat. Yeah, Sean, come on. I mean, let's face it. What I mean, what did she do though? I mean, she tweeted out like in Scotland, a rapist who raped a woman, a male, an actual man raped a woman, and then when he was questioned, he said he identified as a woman, so they put woman down on the charge sheet. I mean, she was just highlighting that. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with highlighting the stupidity of that? I mean, come on. If a man rapes a woman with his penis, but then identifies as a woman, well, he's not a woman, is he? He's a man, just identifying as a woman. And if she wants to call it out and use a power to call it out, then more power to her. And she's hating on trans. Well, no, she's not hating on trans people, is she? She's hating on this ridiculous idea that you can just be a woman by saying you're a woman. That's what she's done. You can't just say you're a woman if you haven't transitioned. That's not being a woman. So, I mean, that's just my opinion, and that's her opinion, and she's as left leaning as she could possibly get, and that's her opinion. But I love you, man. But that's it. That's freedom of speech, isn't it? We're all entitled to freedom of speech. That's the great thing about living in a democracy. I find Howard's Beat that actual fans of they are completely devoid of substance. I've not seen them, Griffin. Not seen them. No intention of seeing them. No idea. Is that just a bot? No idea. Well, whatever woman says she might know how she would feel. Well, it's the same thing, isn't it? I mean, if a woman says she feels like a man and she hasn't got a penis and she's got a vagina, if she feels like a man, well, I mean, fair enough. I haven't got an issue with that. But it's the whole. My only issue was with the man identifying as a woman after raping someone. That's like, you can't just do that and then say I'm a woman, so I'm not a man, and then they put that on your charge sheet. That's just ridiculous. That's just insanity. And obviously, Elliot Page vs J.K. Rowling. Well, yeah, that'd be interesting. That would be interesting. I'm a cyborg. I've totally lost track. Where was I going to go next with my with this live? You know what? I'm trying to put the link in the chat. For some reason, it's going totally fucking pear-shaped tonight. Bear with me. Yeah, it's all going wrong tonight, guys. Where was I going to go? Glitch. Yeah, there's definitely a glitch in the matrix. StreamYard is being a little bit strange, which is not unusual. So bear with me. I'm just trying to check something out. It's taking longer than expected. And that's not helping at all. What is going on? So I guess red pill or blue pill? Definitely red pill. Jesus Christ, definitely red pill. I don't know. I say red pill in real life, If we're talking about like, if we're talking about the Matrix itself, if I was in the Matrix now and someone said to me, you know, and I knew what the red pill meant, and it meant kind of going into that world, I think I'd take the blue pill because that's one of the downsides of the Matrix, the movies or the first film anyway, is that I don't really see the benefits of taking the red pill because life just looks like shit, and I think I'd rather the guy, his name escapes me, but the guy who's like, and who's working for Agent Smith, he's part of the team with Neo. He says that I want to go back, and I don't want to remember any of this. I think he's kind of got it right. It's like, why would you want to live your life like that when you could just live in denial? But in the real world, yeah, I would take the red pill, which kind of, maybe it's a contradiction. But if we're talking just about the red pill in terms of just the world in general, and just, I like to think that, I don't just live my life with the blinkers on. I like to think that I take information from all sides, and in terms of like, I don't really want to go into the whole COVID thing because that's the sort of shit that can get your channel pulled. But no matter how small the channel is, I just, the stuff that I've read about in the last for 20 years in terms of like the fringe sort of stuff that wasn't really available widely, outside of like, certain websites. It's just become mainstream now, and it's become mainstream in like the real world, where it's like literally COVID passports and stuff that I never thought I would see, and I'm thinking, holy shit, some of this stuff is actually coming true. And I'm like, this isn't cool, this shit is like, this is bad. And, countries enforcing COVID passports because you haven't had, the vaccine and a jab. It's like, no, I'm not down with this. This is fucked up. So, in that respect, definitely take the red pill. But if I was in the Matrix universe, I'd probably take the blue pill. The pessimist in me thinks all these blunders films you keeps out the least of this for every major movie. Oh yeah, well, hopefully not. I mean, blimey, Disney just yeah. Disney just, there's nothing but give me greater pleasure than seeing Disney, at least. No, I don't want to see Disney completely fail, but just at least, a little bit of a wake up call for them, because they just, it's just, they just, I mean, they are the company, they virtue signal about, they're so, so they think they're better than everyone else, and yet, I mean, they thank China for like letting them film there, even though China have, concentration camps for like the Uyghur Muslims. And I don't know, it's just wrong. I mean, yeah, I mean, of all the companies, really, who are you to like sort of like put yourself on a moral pedestal? But for some, I'm trying to send the link out because I don't know. Oh, I know what. No, yeah, I'm trying to send the link out and it's just not working. And I don't know why. Because I thought, Griffin wants to jump on, or Law wants to jump on, or anybody else. And why is it not sending? It just will not. Oh, there it is. Have that done it? Okay. Yeah, there's the link. If anyone wants to jump on. Because I'm kind of like, I mean, I could ramble on all night. I really could. I'm quite wide awake. I don't really want to go to bed yet. So, Griff, if you want to jump on, man, jump on. Lorne, if you want to jump on, if you're in the chat, jump on, man, because I've not spoken to you for ages. So, I've got shit to talk about, What have I watched recently? I've just got on my IMDb. Oh my god! Has anybody seen The Wheel of Time? The new Amazon Prime fantasy epic to rival Game of Thrones? Because as a Wheel of Time fan, I mean, I've read the books, 14 books, 15 with the prequel. Great series. It's got its faults, but holy shit, this is a bad interpretation of the books. I mean, it really is. Horror person. Are you a new subscriber? I've never. Nice to see you on board, man. Is it? Are you a new subscriber? If so, welcome on board, man. Watched all season 2 of The Witcher. Really enjoyed it. You know what, Sean? I liked the first couple of episodes of The Witcher, and for some reason, I just stopped watching. And I don't even know why I stopped watching. Maybe something came on that was just like kind of coincided, and I just moved away from it. But I really need to go. I'm a man in heart. Are you? Hang on a minute. Is this Lawn? Is that Lawn? I'm a man in heart. There's a clue there. It's either Lawn or it's somebody else who's already subscribed. I think that's my opinion. I've got a feeling it might be Lawn. But anyway, yeah, yeah, definitely, Sean. I am going to go back and revisit it. I mean, I love Henry Cavill. He's not going to be James Bond by the looks of things. It's not you, Lon. Okay. I'm looking forward to. I mean, by all accounts, the next James Bond is going to be the guy from Bridgerton, which I'm okay with because I think he looks like a fucking amazing James Bond. But if it's not going to be Henry Cavill, I would love Henry Golden because I've seen Henry Golden's name bandied around, and Henry Golden, he's just. I mean, if they are talking about obviously moving away from like the standard like white male, which I don't mind. I haven't got a problem with that at all. But he's got to be British. He's got to be. He doesn't have to be British, as in born in Britain. But you've got to make him obviously English or British accents. But he's got to. I mean, Henry Golden. He's got that short back and sides haircut. He looks more like James Bond than Daniel Craig ever did. And I'd love to see Henry Golden as James Bond. I think he'd be just fucking awesome as James Bond. I love him in the Gentleman. He's great. In Crazy Rich Asians, he's really good. I mean, he's just got that sort of suave, sophisticated look to him. And yeah, if it's not going to be the guy from Bridgerton or Henry Cavill, he'd be ideal, I think. New Batman trailer coming out today. Yes, it looks like, yeah. Is this going to be in the same universe as the Joker? Like, as in, because where's the time? Like, I've just lost with DC. DC is just the DC universe just confuses me to no end. Where does this fit with? Because in the Joker, he goes to Bruce Wayne's manor, but I think Bruce is still a child in that film. So realistically, we could see an older Joker played still by Joaquin Phoenix in this film. Well, not in this. He's not going to be in this film. I know that. But if you're going to set up a new like Batman sort of series with Robert Pattinson, could you bring Joaquin Phoenix in the next film as an older Joker? I mean, the whole DC universe is such a convoluted mess now. It's just, I don't think anybody really knows where we're at with it. You brought Ben Affleck in, who's too old to play Batman at the time anyway. He was, mid-40s. They threw in, the Justice League within like 2 years, 3 years of like starting the DC universe off. Batman was fighting Superman within the second film. It was just crazy. Take lessons from the MCU. They did a good job for 10 years, and maybe it's starting to go off the rails a little bit now. But I mean, my God, you know, the DCEU, DCU, whatever you call it, they could be sitting on a gold mine with the characters they've got. If they just kind of knuckled down and just focused on the core, focus on Batman, Joker, Superman, and they could make an absolute fortune if they just had a cohesive, sort of story going forward. Maybe even go just scratch everything and go back to like year zero and just start everything from scratch, because people are always going to come back to Batman, Superman, Spiderman. Obviously that's not DC, but those characters are money making machines. A lot of the Marvel characters are not money making machines. If you try to do an Iron Man movie now without Robert Downey Jr., that movie would probably bomb, in my opinion. Even with the whole MCU history behind it, I think that film would bomb, because I just think I think that Robert Downey Jr. made that character his own, and people see Iron Man as Robert Downey Jr. People don't necessarily see Superman as Henry Cavill, or even Christopher. A lot of people maybe see him as Christopher Reeve, but no one's too big in terms of Superman, Batman, and Spider-Man. No actor is bigger than the role. Whereas I think with Iron Man, I think Robert Downey Jr. has become bigger than the role, if that makes sense. He's kind of like he was so good at the role, because Iron Man is not like a well sort of established character in cinema, that I think it'd be very difficult now to kind of take that off him and bring someone new in. I think that would be extremely difficult. Affleck was so good as Batman. Yeah, he was good, but unfortunately, I think they got him at the wrong time of his career. I think Affleck was 10 years previously. Affleck would have been great. Imagine getting Affleck as like a 33, 34-year-old, as opposed to like a 44-year-old, or however old he was when. I mean, Ben Affleck's like, what, 50 now? He's older than him. He's a good bit older than I am, and I'm 45. But yeah, Captain America. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I wouldn't argue with that, sure. I mean, and Captain America is a far more iconic character as well. Captain America is one of those, IPs as well, which is like, you could reintroduce Captain America with a new actor, and he wouldn't be overshadowed by Chris Evans in the way that Iron Man is overshadowed by Robert Downey Jr. Because I think Captain America is just so widely known amongst fans of comic books. But yeah, I mean, oh Lord, he's in the chat. What's up, Lord?
Hello, how are you?
I'm not bad, man. How are things going? Been a while.
for everything and everyone.
Yeah, it's been quiet on the people in the community. It's been pretty barren in the last month or two. It's not been much going on.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's anything coordinated. I just think I think 2021 was a lot.
Yeah,
and maybe we're just to the point where everyone needs to take a breather.
Yeah,
I know that's definitely true for me. Well,
you been up to much? What's any films?
Remarkably few films. No, I mean, I started a new job back in October. I had some medical stuff in there, and obviously, as a lifetime retailer, the last month was a thing.
I feel you, man. I'm in the same business, so I know it's been pretty crazy on my end as well.
Yeah, I mean, I keep telling myself that someday I'll get out of it, and then they keep making me offers that I can't refuse to stay in it.
Yeah.
So at least I'm not, at least now my job is a little bit closer to home and a little bit saner at times. So,
I mean,
but I did watch
so
a movie. I did in the last 2 weeks. I've watched a movie, which is pretty exciting, and it started actually a debate among the cast of Region Free, which I did not intend. I watched. I'd been ignoring it. As big of a fan of Train to Busan as I am, and as a big of a defender of Peninsula, the kind of often derided sequel. I'd ignored the middle piece, which is a prequel, because it's animated, and usually animation doesn't really work for me. That says more about me than about animation, but it was excellent. Soul Station is pretty excellent. I think that little trilogy of films is pretty amazing, to be honest with you. I think it might be the best zombie trilogy going, and I'm including Romero's in that. So,
certainly high praise indeed.
well, keep in mind I'm the guy who doesn't really like Dawn of the Dead, so it's not that I think it's a horrible movie or anything. I'm just bored by it. There's long stretches about Dawn of the Dead where nothing happens, and I'm just not into it. And I never connected with any of those characters, so it's kind of like it's a long watch for me. I do it every maybe 5 years just to make sure I'm still wrong about it, and all I have to really do is just mention it, and everyone will tell me I'm wrong about it. But no, but I really suggest, if you haven't watched the whole Train to Busan trilogy, do it. Don't be an idiot like me and hold out on the animated second film, because it's animated. It's really good and goes places that you're not expecting it to. So, high praise. Check it out.
Have you watched Last Night in Soho?
I did see that in theaters when it came out. That was in September, right? Or maybe early October.
Yeah, I think it was about September, October.
Yeah, I did. I like Edgar Wright, so I thought and the idea of him doing a horror film, it sounds great to me, like a legit horror film, not Shaun of the Dead, whereas obviously it's a comedy about horror films. So I think it's a beautiful film. I think it's a pretty great film until it's not. The last act is a mess, just from a narrative standpoint, but it's a beautiful film, and everything is likable about that movie. I just really regret that they couldn't, land it. They had a great flight, but they couldn't land it.
But the film, I was kind of invested on, like say, the last 20 minutes, 30 minutes. I was expecting the ending's kind of like slightly more generic. That was is this it? It's kind of, with Edgar Wright as a director, I was expecting maybe something more of it, maybe twist, and it was kind of like, this is quite sort of a run of the mill movie for like the way it started out, so sort of like freaky, and with obviously knowing Edgar Wright as a director, I was kind of like left a little bit disappointed. It kind of just felt very, very, bland in the last act.
It has a twist, but everyone saw the twist coming, which still could be fine. We don't need to be surprised or shocked when a movie goes in a direction. The problem is it didn't know what to do with it, and where were your loyalties and your sympathies supposed to be? At the end of that film, you're not even sure, and it's not in a good unsure way. It just feels muddy. Because no matter how you look at it, yeah, people do horrible things to each other. And this is not a spoilers, people. Don't worry, I won't do that. But people do horrible things to each other. That doesn't mean horrible things deserve to happen to them as well. This isn't a revenge fantasy. If it would have been set up as a revenge fantasy, which of course they couldn't do because it's supposed to be a surprise, right? I just think the writing got very muddled in the end, and it doesn't pay off the way it should. I suspect an earlier draft was a lot more streamlined and a lot smarter about that ending. But Hollywood is great at pushing films into corners and then making them try and scratch their way out. And that's what this felt like to me. But Anna Joy Taylor, amazing, steals the movie like handily. I wanted a lot more of her, to be honest with you. I wouldn't have minded if they just told the flashback as the movie, because she's so good.
Yeah.
Just she's captivating the whole way through. And unfortunately, every time we were not in a dream sequence, I was kind of like bummed, because I was like, hey, let's get back there now. So, but that's meant as praise, because it's a good film on both sides. It's just she's amazing, and the horror genre never gets recognition at award season, but she deserves it. Absolutely.
I mean, yeah, 60s London is far more appealing than London in 2021.
You think?
Yeah, just a little bit. Slightly more iconic looking. Go back to the 60s when like a major city didn't feel like exactly like every other major city in the world. Like a McDonald's, Starbucks. Back when because I can only imagine. I love going back to watching films from the 70s and 80s, especially New York, with that grimy sort of seedy atmosphere that the movies had then, when major cities were really, really sort of like seedy, and films like is it Maniac? Is it
Maniac?
Maniac, New York Ripper? It's just
yeah. Well, the funniest, and Nightmare on a Damaged Brain, I'd add to that. But I would say like the one thing about New York is that if you experienced a little bit, I experienced the very tail end of it. I started going into New York in the very late 80s for punk shows in the city and at CB's and at Max's. And then in the early 90s, I was there a lot for almost things like Brownies on Avenue A. I was there like every weekend. It felt like seeing some like little alternative band from the Midwest or something. But it was weird because there was a sweet spot, whereas New York still felt like New York in the first like maybe 4 years of Giuliani. But it was safe, but it still felt like New York. And those were really special, great times. I spent a lot of time in the city. And then by the end of the 90s, New York started to feel too, I don't want to say gentrified, because I don't think it was going in any one cultural direction, but it was pretty vanilla no matter what culture was being represented. All the edges were sandpapered down, and a little bit of character got lost there. But I will say the early days of me going into New York were frigging dangerous. So yeah, it looks great on film, but I'm not sure you actually wanted to experience it. So
yeah, I think although it's not affected like where I am, because Liverpool is like it's a lot smaller than New York, or I think London is experienced a similar sort of thing. Not to the point of New York, but there are certainly areas of London which, like certainly like Soho, back in the 60s, that would have been, areas, parts of Soho would have been extremely edgy to go to, in terms of like, would have been a lot of, drug addicts, but that area now was probably, if you probably were to try and buy a flat in Soho, it'd probably be like £1 million for like a 1-bedroom flat. It's so expensive. These sort of like big urban areas now, it's so expensive to live, and so you kind of, obviously you're going to get gentrification, and so a lot of what makes these big urban areas, appealing to people is they like the sort of the diversity and maybe the edginess, but when all these people move in, all that diversity and that edginess moves out, and then you're just left with a load of people who think the same, talk the same, drink in the same coffee shops. It kind of takes away that, do you know what I mean? It's kind of like,
I think too, you have another aspect, and it actually has, strangely, it has something to do with film. In the 90s, one of the things, everyone talks about Giuliani's police policies as cleaning up the city, but another thing happened during the 90s that no one talks about, which is that every street corner got a camera, and New York became a surveillance state in a very real sense. I mean, not so much if you went out of Manhattan. If you went up Harlem until, I don't know, maybe 160th Street still was, is still pretty much Manhattan. But if you went out to Queens or the Bronx, no, there was not as many cameras just on the major thoroughfares, or in crime hotspots. But Manhattan, every corner has a camera on it, and so it became safe. But it became safe because everyone was getting caught for everything, which is not a bad thing. But the consequence is that part of the culture that we used to go into New York for, you couldn't feel it as much by the end of the 90s. And it's funny, it's as much as we celebrate film and video all the time, the negative side of it is when you're the one on the camera, just by being on a street corner. Well, that's a problem,
Was it Giuliani who he kind of brought in this? He was kind of, if you see a broken window, that is a sign of, and so any broken window is immediately, because that is the beginning of like the urban decay. And so he kind of clamped the small things. He clamped down on the small things first, and then it kind of like that's what like snowballed, and that.
Well, there's a rule, right? It's like if you and a friend are running from a bear, you don't have to outrun the bear. You just have to outrun your friend, right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of the idea. It's like criminals will go wherever they're not getting caught. So the idea was, if you make it so tough to commit crimes here, well, they'll just go to Philly or they'll go to Chicago. Now that doesn't really account for all types of crime, obviously, but for the most hardcore hardened criminals, yeah. I mean, if you're gonna get 6 months for graffiti in New York, and because there's cameras everywhere, you're getting caught, and you can go to Chicago or Detroit or Miami and not get caught because they haven't invested in that technology, then in the 90s, that's what you did. It wasn't so much that there was just this, it wasn't so much the police activity themselves as much as the police activity that wasn't happening elsewhere. New York became the safest city because they spent a few years probably overprotecting the city. But whatever. I mean, I'm not sure you wanted your show to become a tutorial on my experiences with New York.
No, it's okay. It's okay.
I can remember. I will tell you one thing. This is horror related. You'll love this. I remember during the Dinkins administration going into New York, and Dinkins as a mayor was very unpopular with pretty much everyone. But he was very unpopular with the police, and the police, because he would not stand beside the police. He criticized them openly, and so at the same time, he had no friends in the police. He also had no friends in organized crime because he was not playing the game. Now, they'd have bigger problems with Giuliani, who actually succeeded him. But at the time, so Dinkins was ostracized, like the cops and the bad guys were all against him. So as a show of force, the mafia actually stopped, because they own the garbage disposal companies. So just because they weren't getting the contracts they wanted, they stopped picking up garbage. They just stopped picking up garbage. I remember going into the city and getting out of the PATH station, which is the train station from New Jersey under the river into New York, coming up on 33rd Street. And even before you reached the street level up the stairs, you could hear this buzzing sound. It was like an electrical wire in your ear, loud. It was the flies, because it was summer, that were swarming around these huge walls of trash that were, I mean, it was like a corn maze in the city, but it was trash instead of corn, and surrounded by like bees and hornets and flies. It was one of the most surreal, like dystopian, apocalyptic things I'd ever seen in my life.
I'm echoing really badly. Sean says, "Did you see the Northman trailer?"
I did.
From Robert Eggers.
I did, and I'm on board with anything Eggers does. I was actually really happy because that trailer, he has to have, Eggers has to have some respect in the industry, because any other director puts out that film, they score it to Led Zeppelin or something, right? The trailer. They do something cheesy and awful, and they didn't do that to him. They let him make a statement, and I hope it's the film it looks like. I hope it's as great as what he's done before. But we'll find out. I mean, he's pretty uncompromising as a director, right?
I've not seen the trailer. What's the premise for the film?
I believe it's a Viking revenge story.
Okay, that's interesting.
It
So
looks
it's good.
looks really gritty and bleak, so of course I'm down.
It's going to be set way back in the past. I'm assuming.
Yeah, yeah.
So I recently, or yesterday, finished a horror novel, which is the first horror novel I've read possibly in about 15 years. It's classed as young adult, but considering it features like lots of 80s references, it's called Video Night by Adam Chizaya or Cesar. Yeah,
The clown in the cornfield guy. Yeah.
yeah. Really enjoy it. It's like I think it's set in '88. A lot of Nightmare on Elm Street. It's set in Long Island in '88 with like late teens, kind of like it's the idea is a kid. He's he's kind of like the unpopular kid at school. He's a bit of a nerd. He's got like a tough best friend who's like the cool guy who like gets laid, and he's fancies like the guy's girlfriend's friend, and wants to get her over for video night. But then there's like a zombie. It's an alien invasion, but with a kind of like a zombie spin on it. It's classed as young adult, so it's not like Stephen King but that's the sort of level I like, because I like that sort of like cheesy, especially if it's got an 80s setting, then I'm all down for that. And it's like 250 pages, and I read it in a couple of days and had a good time with it. So
I'm glad to hear it. I mean, I wish more people would look to pages with words on them for their horror entertainment, because it's getting harder to be passionate about a lot of the film stuff. So, and that's where the news stories are anyway, right?
yeah. It's not very politically correct with some of the language used as well, which is, and I don't want to say that like it's a good thing, but it's just with the way things are, and I've discussed this earlier on, the way things are with 2021 and the way everything's under attack now. I'd like to think that horror literature can stay clear. I'd like to think that horror literature stays under the radar, because even Dungeons and Dragons now is getting attacked from the woke mob. Like they had to change the description of orcs, so orcs can no longer just be.
Orc write a letter.
Orcs now have to have like a backstory where some orcs are really good guys, and they're like they're not all evil green monsters. It's like, this is fantasy. Why do we need to defend orcs? It's like
what really needs to happen, and I mean this sincerely, is that we need to, as a society, we need to really find our heroes, our real heroes, the ones that join us all together. People like Neil deGrasse Tyson, right? One of the most brilliant men on the planet, also a great speaker, a compelling human being, but he can also explain astrophysics to us, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So it doesn't matter that he's African American. That doesn't matter. It's irrelevant to his greatness. Now, is there a story also, maybe, that you could tell about the fact that in his lifetime, he went from a time when segregation was real in America to being one of the most distinguished scientists in America, if not the? Yeah, I think that there is a story there as well, but that's not why he's great. That's another compelling aspect of his story. But we need to find our heroes from across the board. That includes people from all skin colors. The great people need to be really, really shown in the best possible light to give an inspiration for everyone to want to be like those people. Then all these problems go away. But by focusing on the negative, the failings of a society, we'll never get there because it just makes people defensive. It's funny. I would never say that I'm woke, right? But I'm sympathetic to the basic idea that those people have. It's just how they go about it is so wrongheaded so often. I don't want us to be separated as people. I want us all to come together. But it's important not to start tear people down to do it. Everyone's on a learning curve with everything. You know, we're all breaking out of the eggshell, and I just don't think.
I just seem to remember a time like when I was, up until like 10, 15 years ago, where we just kind of we didn't see people in terms of skin tone or sex, or it just and it seemed to. I mean, I'm not going to try and put this everything down on America, but it just seems to be when Trump got in that everything went nuts. 2016 seems to be when everything just elevated, and it's probably coincides with Twitter. Social media as well. I think it's like a combination of social media, certainly Trump as well coming in. Everybody seemed to lose their minds when Trump became president. And
well, so I mean, ideas themselves are never pernicious, right? An idea itself can never harm anyone. It's when someone takes that idea and does something with it. And I think that when you throw around, so I'm going to be very neutral on this because as everyone knows, I'm a libertarian. I don't have a dog in the Republican versus Democrat fight. I didn't vote for either of the cats that ran last time, and I wouldn't. I voted for Joe Jurgensen, the candidate that didn't have credible rape allegations against them. But anyway, so you look at these two figures, and we can talk about pros and cons of the Biden-Trump thing. But the ultimate reality is they're guys in their 70s.
Yeah.
Culturally, they're not where the center of America and hopefully the world is. The first thing we have to do is start electing representatives who represent not the other guy, but our values. We can tend to vote against people, again, a negative reaction, rather than get behind the people we think would be great for the job. And I think we do, if we, again, found our heroes. It's simple. Turn the negative into a positive. You want to change the world? Be John Lennon. It's pretty simple, right? Or even be John Lydon, for Christ's sake, and you'll be in a better place.
John Lydon, legend.
Absolutely. But what you can't do is go out there burning down other people's Twitter accounts because, I disagree with something this guy said 7 years ago. Well, you know what? At some point, something you said 7 years ago comes back to haunt you then. And, realistically, I think if we just really started talking about the things we love and taking the things we love seriously, it's funny. We talk about horror, right? And a lot of people that are outside the horror bubble will say, it's stupid stuff. It's just, blood and guts and girls taking their tops off and whatever. All that stuff is in there. But you want to hear what's important is we're being drawn together for a love of it. It's worth finding out why. Because there is something there that's bringing us together. And that's positive. If we could find a way that politics and social issues and the Twitter mobs could all put down their pitchforks and burning staffs and just find what would bring them together. What do they love rather than what do they hate? Be an easier world. You can tell I've been through a lot this year, can't you?
Just briefly going back to John Lydon. The reason I love John Lydon, I'm not a massive fan of John Lydon, but the reason I've got the utmost respect for John Lydon is, I'm not sure if you're aware, we had this TV personality in the UK called Jimmy Savile.
I knew where you're going with it. He called him out back in the day.
Yeah, back in the 70s. When he was a big star, he could, this is before obviously cancel culture, but the interview never made it into the public domain until years later, but he called Jimmy Savile out and they basically said, I've got like real big suspicions about this guy. And he was probably one of the only people who said anything, and all the people in the BBC knew exactly what this guy was about. And I just wish that there were more people as brave as he was back in the day. But yeah, so for that reason alone, John Lydon's a fucking legend.
John
But
Lydon. The other thing, the thing that people mistake again, kind of like the horror genre. Oh, punk rock, it's a bunch of nonsense and anti-government sentiment. And if you actually listen to the Nevermind the Bollocks album, there's a lot of snark, but those were real. There was real sentiments behind that. I mean, Holidays in the Sun is it's a song about not being an isolationist. I mean, really, again, John Lennon could have written the same song. He would have done it differently, but the sentiment would have been very similar. I don't think people get that sometimes things that have a surface level appeal, whether it's horror or loud rock, in order to be popular, in order to reach people, they have to have more going on than that. Now, don't get me wrong. Something like Jackass, I'm not, the Jackass television show and movies, I'm not going to defend that. I think sometimes people getting punched in the balls is just people getting punched in the balls. But when you talk about, I don't know, commercial art, in order for it to endure and find its audience, it has to have more going on than just what's on the surface. I really do believe that.
Yeah.
Now, Griff outreads me these days, by the way, since you have that comment up.
Probably wrap things up in about 15 minutes or so, but I just wanted to get your, because I was talking before, obviously you came on board, it's about Scream 5, and just where do you see the long-term sort of future of the franchise in terms of, like, where do you think this film's going to go? And do you think that based on box office success, will we get a sixth film, or do you think they'll go down the reboot route? And are you excited for Scream 5? I mean, I'm guessing maybe not, but
it's probably the weirdest place to be for me, because as people know, I'm not a Wes Craven fan. I fully acknowledge he has 3 masterpieces that he made in his life, but I thought he had a lot of bad films that he made as well. So I'm not a sick of.
Before we go on, Lawrence, let me just guess what you think his 3 masterpieces are. So I'm going to say Last House on the Left.
Absolutely.
Hills of Eyes.
Absolutely.
The third one.
And there's
Nightmare on Elm Street. Nightmare on Elm Street.
It is the original Nightmare on Elm Street. Yes. Yeah. And then there's the Near Miss, which is a film that if we could just trim a few scenes, I'd put it up there, and that's Serpent in the Rainbow. But the rest of the catalog is pretty rough. I mean, for every Hills Have Eyes, you have a Hills Have Eyes 2. And for every, Last House on the Left, you have a Deadly Friend. I mean, there's some really...
I like Deadly Friend.
It's a bad film, but it's a bad film. I'm glad you enjoy it, but it's a bad film. And based on a great novel, which is the real crime of it. But so I'm not a Wes Craven sycophant, right? Although I acknowledge the 3 masterpieces and the 1 near masterpiece. I really like Radio Silence, though. I think those guys are amazing. I think Ready or Not is the kind of film that's going to endure long after I'm gone. That's for sure. And hey, that might not be that long anyway, but it'll endure well into the next century. I think it's that good of a film in the genre.
Is that the movie with the girl from The Babysitter? Ready or Not? Is it the one with...
I haven't seen The Babysitter.
Is it Samara Weaving?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I've seen that film. Yeah, it's a good film.
Yeah, no, I think if you revisit it, you'll find how much you love that film. It grows on you. It becomes one of those things, kind of like Trick or Treat, the Doherty's Trick or Treat. Whereas the more times you watch it, the better it gets.
Or I Start Counting.
I Start Counting, sure.
I watched it again.
It's a great film. Lots of layers. But
I did want to speak to you about that film. I did mention it last time.
We'll get there. But so I'm a big fan of Radio Silence. I'm very hopeful that they came to it not just as fans of the Scream movies, but wanting to do something with it. I hope it's just not another Scream installment, because honestly, I'm not a fan of the franchise. The first film was fine when it came out and felt real fresh because we just come out of it was the film that brought us out of the Great Horror Drought, which I consider everything from '93 with Candyman until Scream. You know, there was just nothing in theaters between those. It felt like, except for real crap. And Scream, though, the sequels, I didn't like any of those sequels, and I don't think it's that strong of a concept. It borrowed the first film's twist from several giallos from the '70s, so it's not particularly. I don't know. I don't think it's as groundbreaking as people play, and the fact that there's a couple lines that make it quote unquote self-aware. Yeah, Fulci's Cat in the Brain is way better of a statement of that concept, and that was what 7 years before. So I don't know. Or even April Fool's Day, in the '80s was extremely self-aware. So I don't know. I'm not a Scream fan, but I'm hopeful because I like the directors of this more than I like the director of that started it. So that's a weird place to be because no one's going to be in my camp, but I'm hoping they came to it because they wanted to do something. If they did, then awesome. I think we're on a good ride. Will say, and this is not going to endear myself to any of the Scream fans out there, God damn it, they better kill some legacy characters. And I mean, not just one. They better kill a bunch of them. Because to have these people survive this many of them, I'm sorry, it's just stupid at that point. It's just plain bad writing to keep them around just because the fans will be upset if you kill them. Whatever.
Yeah, I'm surprised Dewey has survived to the fifth film. Or keep Sydney alive, yeah, but I mean Courtney Cox and David Arquette, they could have been, disposed of earlier on, in my opinion. But
give them their big scene because at this point you have to satisfy the fans, but X them out of the ledger. It's not worth keeping them around just because the fans will be upset. The horror should upset you. I hate when I read posts about franchises and they're upset that someone might die. It's like, why are you watching horror movies? Seriously, go to any other genre and you'll be fine. Okay, this is the one genre where in order to have stakes, sometimes beloved characters gotta die. I don't know.
Going back, I just wanted to briefly go back to the I-Star counting because there were a couple of points that I thought were interesting, but I thought from a British perspective, may not have been aware of, but the whole background to where they're living is like a high-rise. You might call it a high-rise apartment. There's lots of shots from outside of looking in to where they live now, and it's like it's basically what we call a high-rise flat. And it's quite interesting because there's a scene where they're watching the TV and it's reported about a woman's gone missing or she's been reported killed, and where they found the body is, I think it's a reference to where they used to live. Mm-hmm. And they're talking about how that's what it's like there. It's it's not like that where we are now. And the interesting point is it's kind of a reflection of like in the late '60s. It probably is similar in the States as in the 1950s and '60s in English cities. They kind of had like after the war, they kind of had a lot of the houses weren't fit for human consumption. Habitation basically, so they were bulldozed and they moved lots of people out of the cities and into sort of suburbia, and they basically put up these high-rise flats, similar to the one seen in the film. And what was interesting is that this film was released at a point where it was still considered kind of like we were lucky to move into one of these flats, because at the time in the '60s, people were living in these cramped, like little, what we call terraced houses, and people were moved into like these modern flats, which were like had all mod cons, and they were seen as like it was like winning the lottery. They couldn't believe the luck. But within 10 years of probably this film being released, these high-rise flats, they were basically a disaster design-wise, because all it did was it uprooted all the families and all the local communities and dispersed them into these ugly grey monstrosities on the outskirts of cities, and crime just rocketed. These high-rise flats became just, areas of just high crime, drug dealing, and a lot of the older generation who were moved out originally thought this is great, and then they realised, well, we don't see our friends anymore, and we're just living in this vast sort of council estate, and we don't know anyone, and there's like drug dealers outside our front door. And I Start Counting, I think, kind of was released at a time, just at the point where they didn't know just how much of a disaster these designs were going to be, because you can see in the way they discuss it, they think they've made it by moving into one of these buildings. And it was the complete opposite. And within 10, 20 years of this film, 50-60% of these high-rise flats have been demolished because they were just a disaster.
One of the things I love about film that gets lost when people refuse to watch anything that has any age to it is that they're perfect snapshots that we can't revisit, right? So you talked about loving watching films from the 70s of New York. That was basically the turnover between 78 and 83 probably is probably the period you're talking about. But it's just like this period. You probably didn't experience that firsthand, but be able to see it after hearing about it for so long, even in a fictional setting, is kind of remarkable. I mentioned Candyman before, which is very similar to what we're talking about, because Cabrini Green was built as a public housing project that was supposed to solve the poverty problem. And what it did is created a war zone. But you or I can't go, even if it was 1993, you or I couldn't go there safely.
Yeah.
So film gave us this awesome opportunity to be able to experience what's happening in parts of the world or even in our own backyards that we don't have access to. And I think that's where I think film can be more powerful than novels or comic books or anything else. But we're losing that because in the modern sense, nothing's set in reality. Everything's made for kids and it's not set in reality. Everything is a computer generated off of a green screen. So yeah, you're visiting worlds you can't go to because they're not real, but you're not seeing worlds that you can't visit that are real anymore. No one's making those movies. And I think that's a real shame. I think that in 30 years, people are going to look back and have no idea culturally what was happening at this moment because it's not going to be really reflected in the films of the time. Maybe it won't be films though. Maybe it will be YouTube. Maybe archived YouTube will be how people explore the world at that point. I don't know, but I don't see it in film like it was in the 60s, 70s, 80s. Started to lose it in the 80s. I think E.T. is probably the most destructive film in our culture's history, because after E.T., every studio wanted to make nothing but E.T. basically.
Yeah,
and they succeeded. Today, everything that comes out is E.T. I mean, basically tonally and parameter-wise of what they're willing to do, it's all E.T.
I mean, there's another scene in I Start Counting as well, which is like I think it came out like 69/70. So the scene with like in the record store and they're in the booth and they've got the head. That is such like a snapshot of a very, very special time in of the 20th century. It's that at the end of the swinging 60s, and it's just such an iconic time for no matter how old you are, everybody can sort of relate to that, from the parents or the grandparents, And there's a scene as well where I think the dinner table, like the dining table, and I think one of her brothers or stepbrothers, he's got like a pair of headphones in. It looks like he's got a pair of Apple. It looks so modern. It's like if it wasn't for the hairstyle, you would swear that if you give him a modern hairstyle, you'd swear he had a pair of like Apple Air, whatever you call them. I don't even wear them, but You know, like, it just looks so like modern. That little thing. It's like, because I think did they? I didn't realize they had them in 1970 or 1969. It's like, it's just really sort of,
and that's the thing. Like, we make assumptions about the past, and these films are like the only artifact we have to prove ourselves wrong. And I think that's important. I mean, the history books are history books, but we don't have to rely on them for periods where we have actually some photographic proof. And again, they are fictionalized, so you can't take the narrative side of it for gospel, but certainly the ability to look and say, hey, that's what the public bus system looked like and how it operated at that time. You know, that's an amazing thing to experience. Fictionalized, but probably pretty accurate, more accurate than we get anywhere else, right?
Yeah.
I think that's, and I worry that we're so far away from that mentality of setting stories in really tactile, real worlds today. I think that's sad. I think if you look at the great filmmakers of the 70s, whether it's William Friedkin or Coppola or Scorsese, they were all about reality. They were all about texture. You know, I mean, that's not saying they weren't telling fantasy stories, but there was a lot of truth being woven in there. And today it feels like, well, we get something like The Unholy that came out this year, you know, a dreadful film based on a great novel. You know, does it ever feel real, like a real place? No, not at all. And that's a problem. We're going to pay a price for that, I think. Well, you know, the good news is, Mike, you know, you and I at our age, we probably won't pay that big of a price for it, but the generations to come will.
Yeah.
But
on that note, anyway, on that, like,
so positive.
Slightly depressing now.
Have a great New Year's, guys.
Yeah. Anyway, on that note, I'm going to wrap things up now because it is getting quite late here. But thanks, Lauren. Thanks for jumping on, man. Always a pleasure. Never a chore. Thanks, Griffin, in the chat. Everybody else in the chat. I will see you guys next week or Friday, whenever.
Don't click
any
that
idea on the any plans for another duel or?
So I'm putting January together over the next week and a half or so. On the second, I do have Joseph Burchak coming on to talk about his classic young adult horror novels based on that he created based on the Skeleton Man. So that'll be fun because that's a pretty big one. Someone that hasn't really spoken about the genre very often, even though he was like an R.L. Stine competitor for quite a few years. People will like to talk about kind of his activism afterwards instead. So that's going to be big, and that's how we'll launch the year on VBV. But yeah, no, expect a return of all your favorite shows and all your favorite programming. It's just been, December was never going to happen.
Yeah.
No.
Anyway, guys, thanks a lot. Thanks, Lauren. Everyone in the chat who's joined. I will see you next time. Bye.
Be good. And we're still live.